The universe is loud in a very quiet way. Are you listening? Welcome to the Cosmic Whispers podcast, where we delve into the realms of spirituality, personal growth, and the cosmic dance between the third and fifth dimensions. In a world filled with noise and distractions, we invite you to tune in to your own cosmic whispers, where we can awaken our inner wisdom and embark on unveiling the authentic self and cosmic connection. Welcome to episode 8, part 1 with special guest LIHLA. LIHLA is a cellist, singer, composer, electronic producer, and storyteller who masterfully blends cello, electronic music production, and vocals to craft immersive aural-hallucinatory worlds of intricately shifting landscapes. She has over 30 years of classical training and a decade of composing and producing experiences, effortlessly navigating between modern classical, electronica, and sonic environments. Her current work explores diaspora of time and space, why we all feel so displaced. She uses storytelling and voice as a link to collective and ancestral memory. LIHLA has been exploring acoustic landscapes that depict the journeys of the internal psyche and induce altered states of consciousness. She is interested in how forming abstract narratives create shared experiences of consciousness and safe spaces for travel. Welcome, Lee. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
You are a cellist, a singer, electronic music producer, storyteller, composer, artist, amongst many other things. I would love to actually hear your background, how you knew that music was your soul path, and just how you got started in all of this.
Music was chosen for me by my mother. It was...
Typical.
It's a really traditional Chinese path where you have two children and they start with piano and they move on to a secondary string instrument. So this was already laid out for me by my birthright. So I started with piano, which was fine. I never really loved it. And then I was supposed to follow with my brother into violin so I could take his hand-me-downs. And then one day I was at a concert and I saw somebody playing cello and I said, no, we're taking that one. And that was my first choice. And my mum was like, are you sure? It's really big. It's going to be like a lot to carry. And I was like, no. I'm not playing anything but this. So pretty much from the age of 3, I played piano. From the age of 6, I played cello. And so it just kind of was always there. And, I did the very Chinese thing of going to lessons and I did orchestra and I did band camp and I did, all of those kinds of things and never wasn't in my life. Neither of my parents are trained musicians, but my father has an incredible voice. So the story goes that when we were born, my mother, who's a bit afraid of blood, didn't want to touch us. So he took us and he washed us and he sung to us. So I guess that's where music came to me first.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful, actually. And so my dad was always singing in the house. There was always music in the house. But I would say that for me, I was a really shy child. I was always very sheltered. I was socially incredibly awkward. And I kind of just felt like everything around me wasn't real. Like all the interactions that I was having with people, they didn't feel real. It felt like everybody was saying a lot, but not really saying anything. And so as I grew older, I guess some part of me became aware that through playing the cello, through performing, there was some kind of actual truthful interaction that I was able to have with people, even if I didn't know them or even if they didn't know anything about me. And I think that was something that was, looking back, given to me by grace. It was a gift that was given to me very early on as kind of a counterbalance to this, I think you spoke about it in your first podcast, kind of it was a cold environment that I landed into on this earth, and I didn't understand it and I didn't feel comfortable in it, but music was always there. It was always warm. It was always real for me. So that was my connection with music.
I can definitely feel the strength and your energy and your storytelling when I listen to your music. And this rarely happens, but when I was playing some of your tracks, like I literally got tears, and like I could feel almost like you've been doing this not just in this lifetime, but for many lifetimes.
Exactly.
Like you feel like an old soul.
Absolutely.
And it's just in your music. Oh my God. I'm just like mind blown when I heard your music. I was like, wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. It's
I'm
like tearing up already thinking about it.
It's beautiful though. Like I think over the years, one of the things that's really become important to me is this kind of honest communication. And I feel like through all the lifetimes that we've had and what we've been given and the templates that we've been given in this lifetime, there's just so much to untangle. And what I spoke to you about before, that really stays with me. And so when I feel that this connection that I've had with somebody is just so honest and so fragile and so beautiful, then everything feels right. And everything, it feels like if we want to talk about life purpose or being in flow or being a messenger or being a channel, this is very much where it all feels correct. It all feels as it should be. And as a child, I was like an old soul, it felt like I had known things before, but of course I didn't have the vocabulary for it.
It's almost like you were already born on the other side of the veil and you just like woke up in your new body. You're like, what's happening here?
Absolutely. It's really scary, I have to say. Like,
it is.
This place is really, Earth is really scary. Being human is really difficult.
It is.
It's just so vastly complicated in ways that seemed completely illogical to me, or just didn't sit with everything that I felt, really.
Yeah. And it's just learning about how to have that human experience in the best way you can.
In the best way you can.
So I guess you didn't really have a spiritual awakening. You were just already awake.
But I did have several. I think, I don't know, how do I describe this? There's a book, the Dark Materials trilogy, written by Philip Pullman, and he talks about this thing of having a gift given by grace. And I always really identified with this because I feel like music was given to me by grace. It was something that I was born with, an intuitive knowing, but it's taken me a lifetime to understand it. And all the work that went around having this gift has been a lifetime, and various stages of spiritual awakenings. I've had huge periods of being asleep or doing things unconsciously, eyes closed, ears closed. Luckily I was given music, which has kind of given me my thread through life. However, I can't say that it made sense from the beginning.
Right.
At all, really. And I kind of feel like I've had several lifetimes already within this lifetime here.
I know that feeling for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I look at myself and I'm just like, Lee, how could you have not known this? It was so obvious. Why did it take you so long? Or, but we take as long as we need. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long, really, is it?
No, definitely not. At least on Earth.
Exactly.
I think Earth feels very slow.
It does.
It's like when we tap into that other headspace, our thoughts and our learnings feel fast and we want to apply it to our 3D life. It's so slow.
So slow. And also waiting for people to catch up as well.
And you just have to not wait. I think that's my learning. You just have to let it be. Otherwise.
Wait. Well, patience was a huge thing. I always had this feeling of running out of time. I always had this feeling that there was not enough time to do what I needed to do or to say what I needed to say. And then my brain would go and just go through all the possibilities and go through work through, the practical side of things, and then what I was feeling and understanding what I was feeling. And then I would look at the person that I was interacting with and realize that they still hadn't opened the door yet. And I remember once in a ceremony that I did, and a voice came to me and said, "Be patient."
Be patient. That's the common theme of my life.
Totally. It's be patient. We're all just these young children scattered around on this earth. We have to have patience. We need to wait for everybody to get to where they need to get to. nothing's going to happen on all the levels that you're experiencing in the time that you're experiencing. We have to wait. And
which ceremony was that?
So this was, I would say, I'm trying to think about time. I have a very, very bad sense of dates and times, like in human realm.
Time is not real.
Exactly. So a few years ago, some time ago, I was going through a really, really important phase of my life. I think it was, I would say, there's a beautiful German word for it, which is called Weltenschmerz, which is world hurt. And I think it's a very, very beautiful term. So it's kind of, when you get to that point in life and you look around and you think, it's all really sad. And I see what you're doing and I feel all of you, and everybody's in so much hurt and so much pain, and they're projecting it on each other. They're going through cycles and patterns, and it's just this never-ending feedback loop that everybody can't find their way out of. But somehow through what we're doing, we're hurting each other and we're hurting the earth. And I think it's something that I had felt very, very young. And I was taught to, I went through the usual ways of, okay, so then you focus on this, you focus on this template, you focus on these goals, you focus on this, and everything's going to be okay. If you just keep these markers that everybody's kept, then everything is going to be okay. And at some point, I'm sure we've all experienced this, I was like, no, everything is not okay. I feel it very, very deeply in my soul that everything is not okay, but what can I do about this? And what is my purpose in all of this? If I see it all and I feel it all, is my purpose to sit here and just absorb the grief that I feel in this world? And so I did a ceremony where I went in with the question, why am I here? What's your plan for me? What can I do for all of this? Just very, very simply that. Just lay it on me now. If you have a grand plan, hit me with it. I remember lying there and I was traveling, and I used to go to these ceremonies. They were just outside of Berlin. And the one reason I went was because one of the women leading the ceremonies had an incredible voice. I remember the first time she opened her mouth, I was like, okay, I'm home. I will go anywhere your music takes me. And I was lying there listening to her sing, and this knowledge came to me, and it was so obvious. I was like, what do you think? Of course it's music. Are you stupid?
The answer's like always in front of our face sometimes.
It's right in front of exactly. It's been there the whole time, and you've gone there, you've rejected it, you've run around, you've danced around it, you've gone into it, you've taken breaks from it. It's like, but it's there. But that was when I needed to go into it, not with my human body, not with my human eyes, not with that. It needed to go in with everything. And that was my point, where all that feeling of unease and unrest and sadness was, my old soul, my connection with the universe saying, you need to wake up. You need to use all of your senses. You need to use all of your potential. You need to, wake up, basically. And since then, I've had several awakenings. It's not been, oh, here we go. All right, now I'm awake. Everything's great and easy. And
they never stop, really.
Of course not. It's it never stops. The learning never stops. I think one of the hardest integrations is, and you spoke about this, these dark nights of the soul, is this, and also what you were talking about with time. It's like when you have these awakenings or you have these understandings in other dimensions, in other realms, how do you bring that back to this world here? How do you apply that here? How do you continue to stay open in a way that you can feed into what is happening in this realm? How do you stay open without being hurt? How do you stay
That's the challenge.
Empathetic without exactly.
Yeah, that's what I think the major learning is for everyone.
Absolutely.
Balancing that and getting past the human challenges of thinking too much, like over analyzing on how do I apply this, when the whole point, it's like really simple, but it's not. It's like, you just need to be, just let it happen. But then we're like, okay, let's maybe I'm just talking about myself, but I'm like, what is the strategy? How do I apply this learning to? It's like, no, you just have to just let it be.
Absolutely. It's like, I mean, I feel like I've collected like all of the neurodivergent labels in my life. It's like highly sensitive, overthinking, ADHD,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, yes. And so it's hilarious because the more I look into it, the more I'm just like, I'm kind of outraged actually, because I'm like, you put this label on me and it's not even real, but it's just a way for people to identify because they don't understand.
Yes.
For example, like ADHD, it's like, I don't have problems concentrating, but I am completely overstimulated because the world is too fast. Everything is too much. Because when you're highly aware of your internal world happening parallel to the external world, there's a lot of information happening in any given moment.
Mm-hmm.
And we're allowed to say to the world, this is just a little bit too much happening right now. And I'm finding it very difficult to operate in this way.
Yeah, it's trying to catch up with your thoughts.
Absolutely. Or just tell them to leave me, like to get out of your own way. I was gobsmacked the other day. I was putting my daughter to bed and she said to me, I mean, they're just incredible. So she said to me, Mama, sometimes when you start thinking, it just gets so complicated. She said, when I'm talking to you right now and I'm not thinking and everything is just fine. And then the moment my brain starts going, it's like I'm just in my own way. And I was like, you were 10 years old and you've just basically given me the synopsis of a book that I'm reading at the age of 42, trying to unravel all of this.
Kids are like little Buddhas, when you're born, you just don't have those filters. You're already open.
Absolutely.
And you already see the world as it is.
Exactly.
And as we grow older in the human experience, it's like we start packing on these layers,
Absolutely.
that we have to end up unraveling when we're older.
I know.
It's like, why did I sign up for this? Exactly. Oh, she's so wise.
Exactly. I have this joke with my partner where we talk about, we're definitely old souls. So it's kind of almost like a joke. It's like the universe has a great sense of humor. And they're like, all right, you know what? This time we're going to give you the sense, like through this veil, that you'll understand there is a wealth of knowledge there, but you won't be able to remember it. And then we're going to put you in this scenario, which is going to be like the most barren context for you to thrive in. And then you're also not allowed to do anything in the same way that you did before. Up you go.
Have fun. Good luck.
Have fun. Let's see how they manage, And it's like, it's almost like, it's hilarious actually.
Some kind of sick joke.
Absolutely.
But we're supposed to enjoy it, right? Enjoy the journey.
Exactly.
How does spirituality show up in your creative life, in your creative process, in terms of your music, in whatever way that may be, whether it's an instrument, whether it's singing, composing, producing?
I don't think I can untangle the two now. I think at some point they got so entwined that there wasn't. I mean, obviously I do have my professional hat when I go, to do with technical things, or if I'm working with a show, blah, 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 blah. There is the professional side, but in terms of the actual creativity, I don't think there is a way to untangle them. But when it comes to the creative process, I actually don't start with music. I trust that will come when it comes. It's something where I've gotten to a point with it where I trust that I don't try to think, oh, I need a melody here, or what instruments, I just trust that the knowledge will come to me when it's supposed to come. But I kind of see that my work begins as firstly cleaning the channel, cleaning the vessel, and being open to receive. And then on a human level, filling, eating well, basically. I often start with reading poetry. I look at a lot of visual art. I'm really inspired by dance and movement. There's a colleague of mine, she talks about it as this incubation period. And it often starts with this feeling that I used to get it as when I was young, before I would fall asleep, where I would be falling asleep and there would just be this feeling that something important is going to happen. And I would fall asleep with this hope that, there's something happening. and I'm going to be part of it. And so I kind of feel like creativity comes like that. It's like this like vibration under my feet, or this like, I don't know, like breathing inside that there's something that is about to happen.
That's beautiful.
And
just being tapped into yourself like that.
Yeah. And I mean, it also kind of, it spills out into the connections as well that I've made within the creative industry, and that I just seem to meet the right people for that moment, you know, or I will start to explore something in my mind, and then suddenly somebody will be next to me at a party, or a colleague will be like, here, meet this person, and they will start speaking, and just, it's like their words are just these glowing beacons of light where they're like, you know, they're speaking to me because I'm hearing the language that has been flowing inside of me. And I think that's where trust just has been so important. You know, that thing of getting out of your own way and trusting that you are part of a consciousness that is so much wiser and so much bigger than you, and trusting that everything will unfold when it unfolds. And our only job is to show up. We just need to be there.
It's funny that you're saying this right now, because this has been the theme for the past few months for me. I tend to get too much in my head and worry, but the messages I keep getting are trust and receive and be open.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you just said that, I'm like, okay, I'm getting the message. I'm learning to trust.
It's coming from all directions.
Thank you for sending me that message.
No worries. I felt you from such a distance. You know, it was just like, I was like, you came up, we connected through Instagram. And I remember saying to my partner, I was like, who's this woman? And I feel like she's quite important somehow. And it just, so when you, I was like, hi, here we are. You know, it's just, it felt really, really, really natural.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of tapping into energy and, you know, working with our sensitivities as we're, you know, we're sentient beings, and to be able to learn more and practice more of tapping into energy. You know, you can feel energy from a distance now and connect from a distance. It's so nice, actually.
We're so lucky.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we have so many more senses and so many more. I mean, one of my spiritual awakenings, I remember thinking, it's so incredible. You know, it's like people have therapy, they have mentors, they have parents, they have friends. But then when you open up another dimension, it's just more places that you can ask questions. There's more wisdom, there's more knowledge, you know, libraries, lifetimes that you gain more access to. And you just feel much more equipped to go through life. And that's, I think, where the trust comes in.
Absolutely. And yeah, just learning to work with it.
Exactly.
Do you have sensitivities like clairvoyance, clairaudience, claircognizance?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes. All of them. Yes.
And how does that manifest in your life? And when did that start happening for you?
You know, one of the parallels that I had with your first podcast was this. So I remember being a child. So I was such a light sleeper as a child. I would wake up at night when everybody else, and I could feel things. And of course, I didn't have I was handed a very Chinese superstitious guidebook on ghosts, which is quite hilarious, actually. You know, it's very, very superstitious, and it's very based on. And so I would lie awake at night, and I could feel things, and I was terrified, but I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. And so I kind of got better at just repressing it and not listening to it. And just going, you know, when things started to prickle, I would be like, oh, no, we're not going there now. This is like, no, this is not for now. This is not for this world. You stay away. And I think I know that my clairsentience came very late in life. It was one of my last awakenings, actually. And it came during the pandemic, and which I think was a huge moment for most people.
Yeah, it was a big trigger for a lot of things.
Absolutely. And it was, I saw it as such a blessing in the end. It was the world saying no in a way that I never would have said. So before then, I was working insanely, traveling, throwing myself into everything. And when everything stopped, and I was so close to burning out, and when the world stopped, everything fell apart. You know, my relationship fell apart. I didn't have access to performing. I didn't have access. I didn't want to create. I just had this big nothingness, which was exactly what I needed, because I would never have taken that time for myself if I wasn't forced into that situation.
Right.
And I remember the beginning of it was, the thought came into my mind that I needed to buy candles and I needed to mark time in my way. And that was the beginning of everything. My altar became the center point of everything at that point. And I remember meeting a woman who is a mother, and she's, you know, videographer, documentarist, and she said, "I'm exhausted. What do I do?" And I said to her, "The only thing I can tell you is build a space for yourself that's real in this world, and it's only for you, and start there." And, you know, everybody's altars mean different things to them. We have our own connections, this world and in other worlds. But that thing of creating space just for that intention, just for asking, just for receiving, just for manifesting, just for listening, just for opening, just for all of those things, was the beginning of everything. And I know in hindsight that was how I treated the stage. I loved performing because this was this moment where we would all decide now. And we would sit there together and we would all, I hope, open ourselves to being in that moment together. And it was so sacred and important to me. That's why I could never give up performing. That's why I grieved for it when the world shut down. And many artists, we had these discussions. It's like, what is it that you're missing? Is it the lifestyle? Is it the attention? Is it the applause? Is it the ego? Yeah. All of these things. And one of the most wonderful pieces of information that came to me artistically and creatively was, this is not about you. And the moment, because we do use creativity as healing, and it is very healing, and it is important, because we can't be a good channel if it's filtered through our pain, if it's filtered through our trauma. In some ways it always is, but I feel one of our duties as an artist is to continue to cleanse, to heal. But when it comes to creativity, that's when I get out of the way. You know, and just receive. And, you know, I always feel such gratitude that in the creative process, the universe allows this message to be housed in my body somehow for a period of time. I'm given this gift during the period when I'm creating. And one of the difficult things as an artist is to give it away and say, this is, thank you, but now this is not for me, this is for everybody else. The message doesn't come from me. It needs to have a life outside of this now.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And it's like you're channeling these stories through your music for the collective.
Absolutely.
And it's your gift, that's your superpower, and you do it with such ease and grace.
Thank you.
I mean, it's like your music is so multi-dimensional. It's incredible. And the fact that you can play these instruments, you can sing, you can produce, it's very impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that with the world.
Thank you for listening.
Have you ever felt like you need a little grounding when the full moon hits? Perhaps you want to open your third eye a bit before meditation, get your creative juices flowing for a project, or balance some womb healing? Cosmic Mama ceremonial herbal teas for the chakras can help. Our 100% organic, sustainably sourced, and caffeine-free blends are meticulously handcrafted in small batches. Whether you're looking for an herbal infusion to complement an intentional moment or ceremony, or you just want to enjoy a soothing and delicious brew, Cosmic Mama is here for you. You can support our podcast and enjoy 15% off with code WHISPERS15 on cosmicmama.co. Indulge in the magic of Cosmic Mama ceremonial herbal teas and let their harmonizing essence guide you on your path of connection and well-being. And in terms of storytelling, how do you come up with these stories? Do you use your shadow self and do you channel that into your music?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you use all parts of your soul or whatever you're going through?
Absolutely. I always wrote words as well. I think I wrote words before I wrote music. My other escape, apart from music, was reading. I would read everything in the house, medical dictionaries, whatever was there. I read Bible, whatever was there. I read it because I just loved reading and I loved this. To me, communication, always searching for the right words, always searching for the right way of saying everything. You know, I try not to give up until it's exactly as I intended it to be said, because I don't want the other person to not fully understand. So I always wrote. In terms of intertwining that with music, it came much later. So using my voice is something that came quite late in my career. I was piano and I played cello, and, you know, the cello is like this, it's the same size, you know, it has this female figure. It has this huge, beautiful range that's so incredibly epic, you know, and somehow so human that I felt like my own voice was nothing compared to it. But I did love to sing, but I just always felt so shy to sing or to speak in front of other people because it just wasn't in the same realm as what the cello could produce. But more and more, I realized that I was hiding. You know, when you play the cello, your limbs are bound to this instrument. You can't move. You can't get up and talk to the audience. You can't connect as a human being. And I found more and more, I felt like I wanted to speak to people. I wanted to connect through my human body with them. And the only way I could do that was through voice. And I did find it easier to tell stories first. That also came to me by grace somehow. You know, when you never really hear your own voice, you don't listen to it, you don't kind of disregard it. And sometimes, you know, like being a child of the 80s, you would hear it on the answering machine and you'd hear it and you go, who's that? Like, what is that? Who's that person? You know, and I know many people who don't like the sound of their own voice. And so by accident, somebody asked me to record a voiceover for them for a show. And people said to me, you have this voice, like you could use that. And I was like, never thought of that. And more it became something where I realized that storytelling was just, I think it's something that taps into this feeling of, as a child, of being safe in a community. I think it really does like pull that string from childhood of belonging. It has this like very kind of primal feeling. And I remember, you know, talking with friends and we would like read stories to each other and we'd be like, oh, I feel so safe with you. This feels wonderful, you know, as a grown up to be read to. And then I started thinking, why not? You know, why don't we need stories as grown-ups? Why don't we need to hear somebody speaking to us just for us with this intimacy of humanity?
I think there's a lot of limitations people put or society puts on being an adult. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, things like kid like things, storytelling, dancing. Oh, I'm too old to like do this. I'm too old to. I'm like, no, you're not too old to have fun.
Who said that?
Yeah,
absolutely. It's like,
who told you that? Who made up that rule?
Who told you that?
Yeah.
Who told you that? Exactly. Exactly. That's like one of my favorite things to tell people now. You know, it's like, I feel like one of the best things about choosing a life in your own way is that it gives you the right to say, you know what? Mm-hmm. So what? Who taught you that?
And who cares? Who cares?
Who cares? It's like just giving people permission to be. You know, I feel like so many people are waiting for permission to live. And so I try to just be that example. It's like, yeah, I've made so many mistakes. I have fallen over so wonderfully, epically, so many times.
But you can't even really advance in life unless you make mistakes.
Well, that's it.
Otherwise, you sit there in the corner and not do anything.
Exactly. Or we just reproduce something that's already been done before, and you just feel not at ease in this life that you're supposed to be having because we know that we're supposed to be doing more.
I have a question about your shyness growing up. Do you think that was nature or nurture?
Nurture. Absolutely. People, when they meet me now, I say to them, well, I am very shy and introverted. And they're like, no, you're not. But as a child, I was very loud, apparently. And now I'm quite a quiet speaker, but that was trained into me. It's like, don't be too loud. I have a huge, very, very dirty laugh that's, from the belly, that's completely unladylike.
That's who.
And I remember my mother used to say, yeah, exactly. My mother used to say to me, you have a laugh like a fisherwoman's wife. I didn't know any fishermen's wives, but I was like, okay, so it's like, shh, don't be like that. To stifle the joy of a child.
Oh, yes, I can relate. I think we have a lot of similarities in the way we grew up, because I remember my mother told me in preschool I used to get in trouble for talking all the time. I'd talk to everyone around me. I would sit on the table. I was really rambunctious.
Mm-hmm.
But then growing up, I became extremely shy to the point where I wouldn't say anything to anyone. And any kind of public speaking is just horrifying for me. So I never joined any debate clubs. I always avoided anything to do with talking with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely am still an introvert, but I think my lesson in the past during my dark night was to use my voice. And this podcast is, way out of my comfort zone, but it's strengthening me in that way.
Absolutely.
I don't think I'm shy now. I think I'm just introverted. And it depends on the person. I can be extroverted with a certain person if we have that connection, but if not, I'll just kind of be in my own little world.
But I think also if you're highly sensitive, you get to a point where you know quite quickly if the connection is honest or not.
True.
And I've kind of also gotten to that point where it's like, well, I'm not going to put energy into this if this is not flowing both ways.
Right.
And it's not my position to convert somebody who is not listening or who is not ready, who is not at that point. So I always had that, though. It's just like if I felt like something was not honest or not for me, then I would put my energy somewhere else. Sometimes it's really difficult to understand, what labels were handed to you or given to you, which ones you gave yourself, and which ones actually are. I feel like many stages have just been unloading, just like stopping on the side of the road and going, okay, I don't need this anymore. Or, thank you, but this story it's not real anymore.
Yeah.
This story is just a repetition, or this was a gift handed to me by a person 20 years ago that I've carried around, and I don't need this anymore. Making space for abundance that we have around us.
Yeah.
So we do need to make space. I mean, even in the labels, introvert and extrovert, it's like introvert has often been associated with shyness, but
it's not. It's two different things.
It's not. It's two different things. It's that we fill our own cups.
Exactly.
And we need the quiet and space to do that. I think everybody should fill their own cups, actually.
Yes, it's healthy. It's healthy to learn to be alone and be at peace.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things that I remember saying to myself in the pandemic. I was like, okay, no distractions now, Lee. So it's you and me. It's only you and me till the end. Like, we're the only ones that are going to be in this together till the end. So we need to learn how to get along, liking yourself, loving yourself, being compassionate with yourself, being kind to myself still is one of the most difficult lessons. I think, kindness for other people is easy.
Why is the human experience like that? Why is it so hard to be kind to yourself? I think for me, it's also nurture, that part.
Yes.
I think naturally you want to do things that are fun and for yourself, and then you grow older. And you were talking about narratives from 20 years ago. Those are the hardest to break. They were planted so early.
Well, you don't even realize they're there. And you don't even have a choice in it, And I mean, one of the most healing things was having my daughter. I knew she was coming. I knew she was coming for a long time before she came. And I knew when she came that she's definitely, one of my soulmates. We talk about this all the time. She's like, yeah, I chose you. I saw you. I looked down and I saw you. And I was like, that's going to be my mama. You're the one.
Oh my gosh.
She's incredible. She's such an incredible human being. And a friend of mine, she said about her daughter, she said, my daughter was a gift from the universe to save me. And when I heard that, I was like, yes.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's incredible that she remembers.
Yeah. I mean, from so young. I remember one day her saying to me, we were at the top of a slide on a Tuesday night probably. And she turns to me and she's like, Mama, what were we before we were Stardust?
Oh my gosh.
She's incredible. So she's like definitely like my best channeled creation. Definitely.
Have you done any past life readings with her?
No, I haven't.
That would be really nice to learn.
That would actually be really, we have our rituals every night. And I remember she's at that age where I realized, she's starting to have trouble sleeping at night.
Oh, here it begins.
Here it begins, exactly. And I was like, oh, here we go. And like, all right, we need to start to nurture this because, like you and I, we spent many, many nights alone. Scared through this, and she doesn't have to, and that's a beautiful thing.
And it's great that you can give her the tools to guide her so she can see the positive parts of it. When you mentioned that you had that book about ghosts, but it was fear-based.
Yes.
And the reason why I saw so many negative entities when I was growing up is because I was told that there were only negative things, that there were only negative ghosts that were out to hurt you.
Exactly.
That's completely not true.
Absolutely.
And when I learned, oh my gosh, it took me until I would say late 30s. I'm 41 now. So like my 30s to learn that, okay, I can actually see positive things. And once you switch that, you start seeing it. And
absolutely,
occasionally I get some negatives, very, very rare, but it does come through. But now I have the tools to get rid of it.
Exactly.
And welcome in the nice entities.
I mean, they're our guides. Absolutely. Yeah. They're there to guide us.
Yeah. And it could be fun,
Absolutely.
When I see sparkles, I get really excited. I was like, oh, you little angel. Yeah, it's very
beautiful.
Cute.
So beautiful. I'm always so curious how people's, because it's not something you talk about on a daily. It's like always everybody has their own.
It's like, you need to go to that loony bin over there. What are you seeing? I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just some sparkles.
It's just some sparkles. It's just I was just talking to this and this and this and this. I mean, I remember when I did have like one of my huge awakenings in that went in through the other worlds, but then I developed an ability to be able to see into other people's worlds. And being the good Asian student I was, I tested it. I was like, okay, I would say things and I'd be like, yeah, there was this and I felt this and this, but what did you think about this? And, I really did, because I did have
of course
so much skepticism, like my own skepticism to work through. It's like, am I going to be committed? Who can I speak to about this? And I still am a little guarded with in certain areas about what I will open up or who I will open up to or how much information I will open up. But I'm finding more and more that people are so excited and fascinated because finally somebody's saying there is another way. And then when I started to really look around at other forms of organized religion, or they're all just as ridiculous if you look at them with, like really, really dry eyes. They're all as implausible. So the only thing that is plausible is that maybe it is all real. It's all possible. Why not?
I feel like most organized religions have the same foundation.
Absolutely.
Like they have all the same foundation of what spirituality is, but then humans came and made it organized.
Exactly.
They have the beautiful part of the ego, which is part of the religion, and they have the ugly part, which turned into extremists and dogma and trying to convert people. And I think, the basis of spirituality is not converting people because it's everyone's own journey. You can't force anything on anyone.
Absolutely.
And if you can, it's because you're preying on vulnerability to force someone to be something else.
Because you're afraid of losing something that is not truthful. A lot of what I feel with spiritual connection or creativity is very feminine based. Like there is no doubt that, I would choose a cello. I sing, these are all very, very, very feminine energies. Actually, one of the most difficult things was finding my voice. Like I sang in choirs. I loved to listen to R&B when I was in high school. Like I sang with Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, but that's not my voice. And it's taken a very long time. And one of the most incredible discoveries I made very, very recently. So just finished an album.
Ooh, congratulations.
Thank you. And in this album, when I was starting to go into it, I just said, you know what, just no rules. I'm not going to make this to fit a certain genre. I'm not going to make this to sell to a certain audience. I'm just going to make, it's going to make. And through this process, I ended up channeling so many different voices that when I would listen to the recording back, I'd be like, who is that? Or I didn't even know my voice could do that. Or I would be whispering messages that weren't in a language that was from here.
Is that light language?
Yes. And it became it really became this. People were like, what's your thing? And I was like, it's this. But it took me a long time to understand what it was. It's like, oh, I do this like whispery, witchy thing. And they're like, okay, great. It's like, oh, it's like, oh, this alien voice and this and this. And I just didn't even question it. But it somehow became the center foundation of most of the work that I produce, or most of my composition. In this album, what I felt like was this like funnel for thousands of years of feminine voice, for women's circles, for chanting, for storytelling. Yeah. And all of this was just like, I was like, yes, I want to give it a voice in this world again. These voices need to be heard. They need to be sung. They need to be felt. These stories need to be told.
And we have so much divine feminine healing to do on this planet.
Absolutely. One of my most memorable experiences was, so I have this connection with traveling to places that have volcanoes. I don't know why, I just always end up there. I just feel like it's something, there is something that is portals to the center of the earth. There is just like such incredible energy there, so explosive. And so I had taken a holiday to the Azores Islands, and I was at this lake, and this lake is called Lake Furnace. And, like there's like bubbles in the water, and there's like, you could just feel this like activity under the earth. And I had taken to like meditating by the lake wherever I was, and spending a lot of time with very old trees. And I remember halfway through, as I was walking around this lake, and I sat down on this huge fallen log that was covered with just the softest, most beautiful moss. And I sat down and I put my hands into the moss, and the earth spoke to me, and she allowed me to experience her lifetime in human, I can only explain it like that, in human time. And I felt her as a young girl, as a mother, that was the one that actually really hit me, was this feeling of feeling her as mother, raising children who are running around just completely unaware, knocking over, destroying everything. And she's still loving us compassionately, but grieving for us. And this feeling of grief was something that was just it hit me so deeply to feel her, to feel that we've been on her all these years, and she's been so compassionate with us, even though we've been very naughty children. Speak about feeling what is in the music. There is a lot of that in there, giving voice to, giving kind of a tangible accessibility to these things that I'm sure we do all feel on some level.
Consciously or unconsciously.
Exactly. And it's often, there is this, people talk about entertainment versus art. Entertainment is to forget or to escape, and art is to sit with, to make space for what is not always, well, it is beautiful though. I do find beauty in sadness. I find beauty in discomfort. I find beauty in darkness, I always work with shadow before I worked with light. Light is something that I'm learning.
I just recently learned about that. And I think it's natural for us to want to suppress the darkness, but everyone has darkness. Absolutely. And you have to learn to use it. And that was my recent learning.
And it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful.
Great. It is.
And, sometimes the most incredible conversations I've had with myself were, it's that long overdue, all right, we're not happy here, are we? And we're not being the best person, and it's kind of ugly. And looking at yourself and going, okay, acknowledge that. I acknowledge my part in this ugliness, but then not staying there. That's the thing. That's the difficult thing, because that can really get you down. This is the part where everybody's afraid of, so we all run away. It's like, oh my God, I feel horrible, and you want to run away. But that's the beginning of the real learning, right?
Right.
To then be able to go, all right, so where do we go from here? How do we become that person that we want to be? How do we become that person that we can really love, that we're happy with? And having those really long, ugly, dark nights, moments is kind of the beginning. I wouldn't say that I'm completely there yet, to be really patient with other people. I'm trying really, really hard. But to be able to, when people are behaving in a certain way, just to try to be compassionate, because when we're behaving badly, what's going to help us is compassion in the end. because feeding into the negative, nobody wants to feel like that. We just got stuck, you know. I think being a parent really helped with that, you know, like seeing a child having a tantrum, just going, that's not the time to go, what is wrong with you? They knew what was wrong. They wouldn't be doing that. They wouldn't be responding in that way. It's like very obvious. They just got here and they don't understand what's happening. And to ask a child, what's wrong with you? Why are you being so noisy, or why are you being so emotional? It's just the most ridiculous thing, but people do it. But to give that being space to be loved and to understand that this mistake is to fall over, and this whatever, it's not a mistake, but it's okay. And they got this. They will have it. They will have it. And we will have it. But we just need to be given that safety and that trust to be able to go, all right, so how do we go from here?
You know, learning to communicate. I mean, as a child, you know, you don't have those other tools to communicate, so you throw a tantrum. And I think we often forget that.
Absolutely.
And as adults, I think a lot of these adults that act out, they still haven't been given the tools.
Well, they're still having tantrums.
Yeah.
I was talking about this the other day. It's like, you just imagine, one of the best things I heard was, when somebody's behaving like that, just ask yourself, how old is this person right now? You just go, okay, how is the person who is behaving like this right now? And you see them, and it's like, they're often very young. You know, it's like a grown 52-year-old man is suddenly like 4 in front of you, and you go, oh, okay.
Their inner child needs help.
Yeah, well, they got stuck there. They literally have been living at 4 for the last 48 years, you know.
They need to say hello to their inner child.
Absolutely.
And that's probably a sign that they've been running away.
Definitely.
It's hard to not take it personally, but once you step away from that, you're able to show compassion for what's really happening.
Definitely.
I mean, living in Paris, I'm kind of in the land of tantrums.
I live in Berlin. I live in Germany, which it was funny because I was like, I'm not going to bring that up. One of the interesting things is many people who move to Germany, it's like, it's such a culture shock because it is a very detached, cold, quote in quotation marks. You know, I mean, I grew up Chinese parents, so it's like, I get. I don't choose it anymore, though.
Exactly.
But it's, you know, I don't want to participate. For the first few winters that I had here, I had a very difficult time. Even it was also my own work that I needed to do, my own insecurities that were being poked. And it was constantly like, I don't belong. People don't like me. I don't belong here. And it was that thing of being back into being in a general cloud of unhappiness. And this is something that I grew up with. I remember... Is my mom? I don't think my mom's going to listen to this podcast. I'm going to tell you. So I remember asking my mom, I said, you know, I'm watching my child and she's such a happy, loving human being. So I don't have memories of being happy. So what happened? I cannot find memories of happiness and safety.
The nurture, it's the upbringing. I had a similar experience here.
It's nurture. I mean,
it's culture.
Exactly. But our parents weren't given those tools either. It's cultural. They were raised in even a more difficult time, a more closed time. You know, women weren't supposed to go to school. Women were supposed to get married. There was, you know, like both my parents come from huge families. You know, there's like 10, 12 kids in each family. They weren't raised by their parents. They weren't raised, actually. Let's just put it that way. And so the concept of nurture was not even, it was never activated somehow, or it was completely repressed from the start. I kind of believe that we are naturally nurturing.
Yeah, we have definitely a similar bringing.
Absolutely.
It took me probably into my 30s to release it and forgive and like truly understand with 100% of my body and soul that, you know, everyone's doing the best they can with the tools and resources they were given. And at the end of the day, each generation is, well, at least in my family, each generation is better and better and better.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like healing the ancestral lines and teaching the next generation to be better.
Exactly.
It sounds like your daughter is a little starseed. This magical starseed.
She absolutely is. She definitely is a little starseed.
I don't really want to have human kids, but I have a dog, and we did a reading in the last episode, and she's actually an older soul than I am.
Oh.
And she actually came here to guide me.
Yes.
Because I wouldn't listen to a human, which is so true. I'm like, I'm so like, I'm not going to listen to anyone. No one can tell me what to do. And they're like, all right, we got to send her a dog because she's only going to listen to her dog. And it's so true.
So true.
It's funny.
Yes. Do you think that's nature or nurture, this feeling of not listening?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's both.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of me has some work to do in terms of getting triggered when people tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it really depends on the approach.
Yes.
You know, if someone's going to be condescending, that's a huge trigger for me, right?
Absolutely.
Because with Asian parenting, it's a very fear-based way to raise your child. So I have that trigger still.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also really like to be on my own and I like to be alone in my creativity. And I'm all for collaborations, of course.
Yes.
But I feel like personally I always have a limit to what I allow.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's all energetic work, right?
Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
Yeah. And I definitely know I can work on that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, maybe that's just me.
Maybe.
We'll see, right? Who knows?
We'll see. Exactly. I worked as a soloist for a very long time. And recently I just like playing with other people. And it's like that feeling of just jumping in the river. Particularly one of my huge things is singing with other women. This has just been the most incredible thing. So last year I toured with a band of 4 women who were all mothers. And we all sang and played instruments. And the first time we sang together, we were all just like, did you feel that? Oh, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So I became an electronic producer not because I wanted to be, but it became by default because I was working with electronic producers and they were not giving me what I wanted. So then I was like, I'm going to do it myself. And it is a very male-based industry. And it's a very egocentric industry. And I reached a point where I thought, am I a difficult person to work with? It was just like this cycle where they would feel insecure and lash out, which would trigger my insecurities. It wasn't a collaboration at all. It was a huge life lesson. And it just kept happening when I was working with those particular male artists. And I started to think, I also did have a lot of learning, that thing. One of the things is not understanding that criticism can be constructive and not taking it personally. But that was a long journey of detaching my ego from creativity. And that needed to happen before I could be like, rather than saying, I like when I collaborate to not say my or our piece, it's the piece, it's the work, the story, the music. It's like not putting any ownership, because then it becomes difficult, because then it's people fighting to have a bigger part in what is seen. And that's just a waste of time and energy, basically. And I learned that through working with other women. It was a period where it just seemed like I was only working with other women. And there's this horrible myth going around that women are bitchy and they're competitive.
No, that's fake news.
It's fake news. Yeah, this is like a political slander campaign.
It is. And it's been like that for centuries.
Exactly.
That's completely nurture.
Exactly. And that is going back to, divine femininity is what the world is missing.
Yeah.
This fundamental part of community, fundamental part of humanity, fundamental part of spirituality, fundamental part of the universe is that the nurture of femininity, the collaboration, the listening, the support, all of this compassion, selflessness in the most beautiful way. Because I think Western culture has also taught us that being selfless is something to be ashamed of. This thing of she does everything for everybody else, or, like she's just living her life for other people. But why not if it's done truthfully, if it's done in a way that it's a cycle that just flows? But everybody's like, no, you have to think of yourself. And you know what? I was listening to this beautiful talk by Alan Watts on self-love. And he talks about, everybody's talking about self-love. Like, what is it to love yourself? He's like, it's like trying to kiss your own lips. It's impossible.
That's funny.
And he said, they keep talking about loving themselves, but they don't even know who they are. So they don't even know who they're loving. I was like, brilliant.
Right.
It's so brilliant. And then he just said, well, if all we are is a reflection of the universe, then by loving everyone, we love ourselves. And I was like, why didn't I think of that?
It's so simple, but it's not.
It's so simple, but it's not.
Join us next week for part 2 of the interview with LIHLA. You can get in touch with LIHLA on Instagram at LIHLA Lee, on Facebook at LIHLA.music, SoundCloud at Lee Chun, or her website www.leechun.com, which is linked in the show notes. See you next week.
yourself. Release. Release your expectations of what you think the world owes you. Release yourself of what you think you owe them. We are all just in existence, side by side. And we've forgotten that the mere existence itself is a miracle. We are waiting for others to shine a spotlight on it, to make it mean something, to make it a story worth telling, to make you the hero, to make you the good guy. Release yourself. We're not always the good guy. It's not always a story that's worth telling.
Thank you for being a part of our community. Be sure to connect with me by hitting subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. I greatly appreciate your support and would be thrilled if you could leave a review. Your reviews help this podcast reach a wider audience and foster stronger collective connection. You can also connect with me on Instagram and YouTube at The Cosmic Whispers Podcast. Thanks for listening.